might have seen this guy with the crazy haircut that just recently got elected as the president of Argentina. Well, he is Argentina's last hope because as president-elect, he has to pull the country out of an inflation rate of 289%. But I always wonder, who is this guy? What does he do? Why did he get empowered? And most importantly, why is the rest of the world following his footsteps? So who is Javier Milei? Let's talk about that.
The successful entrepreneur is a social benefactor who contributes to the well-being of society as a whole. In short, a successful entrepreneur is a hero. This is the model that we are proposing for the future of Argentina, a model based on the fundamental principles of libertarianism, the defense of life, freedom and property.
Milei is unlike any other president in Argentine history. He is known for his flamboyant personality, his strong presence in the media, and his role as one of the greatest representatives of capitalism in our era. He is completely opposed to socialism and communism and repudiates the governments that support these ideas that led to Latin America's poverty. You only have to look at the living conditions of first and third world countries to realize that what Milei says is true. In fact, no nation has achieved economic success under a communist or socialist regime. However, the controversy does not end there. Many of the politicians who espouse the ideas of socialism can afford to buy property in Miami or Dubai, while their electors are starving in the streets. These snakes live off the workers' taxes and make sure that they remain poor because for them, poverty is a business. Milei believes taxes are theft and plans to eliminate as many as possible once Argentina has paid its debt to the International Monetary Fund. He is an economist, so he understands numbers and defends the idea of anarcho-capitalism. Unlike most Argentine politicians, he does not come from the public sector, but from the private sector. But you won't believe what led him to enter politics. Peronism, the enemy of Argentina's prosperity. In Argentina, there is a phenomenon called Peronism, and it has certain similarities with the U.S. Democratic Party. The first Peronist government took place in 1945, and its ideas were continued by Kirchnerism, which has ruled Argentina since 2007. Both Peronism and Kirchnerism have been responsible for the extravagant inflation Argentina is facing. They have printed an absurd amount of money to finance their campaigns and buy votes from the poorer classes. Even the dead voted during the Kirchnerism era. Likewise, foreigners received money in exchange for crossing the border to vote in elections. It is not news that those affiliated with this party have enriched themselves in the last few years. Each Argentine government made sure to increase Argentina's macroeconomic problem either by borrowing foreign debt or printing more money at the expense of people's welfare. Nobody wants to admit that Argentina has a problem, let alone solve it. But the worst does not end there. Many Argentines do not even need to work. The government pays them to consider them a vulnerable group in exchange for their loyalty. It is common for people to cut the streets to demand more money from the government. Before Milei's arrival, it was common for presidents to accede to these demands. With Milei in power, the poverty business seems to be coming to an end. He has raided the homes of social leaders and non-existent soup kitchens that sold the same food provided by the government. Many leaders of different social organizations extorted their members to attend demonstrations under the threat of taking away their social benefits. As a result, many people did not even know why they had been summoned.
I know that I'm against social programs. That's not what the problem is. Because I believe the government should step in and help the less fortunate. I'm not against that. But when you have a government that incentivizes you staying home, they control you. Because at any given time, they can take that away from you. If you're relying upon the government assistance, you're pretty much giving your freedom to the government. It is, honestly, the definition of slavery. Modern-day slavery.
Unfortunately, these harmful ideas have strongly permeated our society.
Even though state social assistance has existed for more than 150 years, Kirchnerism has repeatedly turned it into its main weapon to win elections. One day, however, Milei won the elections after waking up more than half of the population. This is not to say that social welfare is a bad thing, But in Argentina, 50% of the population works, so that the other 50% does not have to. Taxes are another big problem facing Argentina. Thousands of merchants have had to close their doors because of the excessive taxes they have to pay. The government does not allow the working class to buy more than $200 per month, so they are forced to save in the devalued Argentine peso or buy dollars clandestinely. As a result of decades of neglect, most of Argentina's state-owned enterprises are either bankrupt or full of incompetent employees. Nevertheless, amid all this chaos, Milei did something completely crazy that helped him consolidate his political position. But before discussing it, let's see what made him so famous.
From television to politics.
How did he go from television to politics? Javier was an unknown economist until he first appeared on television in 2016. There, he stood out for having heated arguments with other politicians and journalists and defending the ideas of freedom in front of hundreds of thousands of viewers who realized that the state was ripping them off. Milei was not afraid to be offensive or too aggressive, no matter how many people decided to attack him. Sometimes he was invited to television programs to be provoked until he lost his temper. But while the owners of the big TV production companies saw him as a funny guy who made them money, you really are a funny guy! People began to take note of his ideas and study what he was saying. Javier called the political class thieves and criminals on numerous occasions. Over time, he became a master at winning debates, no matter how hard they tried to corner him. He has also written several books explaining why Keynesian theory does not work and why he believes in a small state with less public spending and free competition in all areas. For some people, Milei was an intellectual reference and a necessary voice for a public debate on the future of Argentina, as he had no qualms about speaking the truths that no one else wanted to hear. However, for others, he was a public enemy. That is why the media have tried to do everything possible to ruin his image. As it happens everywhere in the world, in Argentina, journalists are bought by different political parties. That is why people have let themselves be brainwashed and voted for the same useless ideas for decades. Nevertheless, Milei knew how to take advantage of his fame in the media to build a political career and change things from within. He was challenged to create a political party if he was not satisfied with the current parties and responded by creating one. Then in 2019, he became a national deputy for the Libertarian Party. But here comes the craziest thing about his career. He raffled his salary to random citizens. But why? Because he wanted to give the money that the state had been stealing from the taxpayers back to the people.
Let them be free. Don't bother free people.
That being said, everybody's got skeletons in their closet. So let's talk about the bad and the ugly about Javier Milei.
Like any person, he is not a saint. He is temperamental, which has led him to argue with other world leaders. Recently, Argentina had a diplomatic conflict with Spain after the Spanish government accused Milei of being a drug addict because of his flamboyant personality. Milei could have escaped this situation gracefully, but decided to strike back, which led to somewhat strained relations between Spain and Argentina. Although a good economist, he still lacks the necessary experience to be considered a professional politician. Moreover, he has no problem making enemies with any government he considers socialist. This is how the diplomatic conflicts between Argentina and Spain began. Spain is governed by the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party and has been one of Argentina's main allies. Despite this, Milei spoke at the World Economic Forum in Davos against socialism and warned the world's great leaders of the danger the West faces. He stated that some people in ignorance and others, in their ambition for power, defend the ideas that condemned Argentina to poverty and stagnation. His words were blunt, and they were not well received by the main defenders of socialism. Yet this is exactly why Milei is becoming a global phenomenon. If he can influence the mind of a great world leader, the fate of millions could change. That said, let's focus on the ugly.
Entonces, mirá, si las mujeres verdaderamente ganaran menos, tendrían que contratar todas mujeres, van a ganar más plata. Y entonces...
The tough decisions facing the president. Javier Milei is changing Argentina faster than any other president in its history. In just 1 month in office, he eliminated the fiscal deficit. For those who don't know what a fiscal deficit is, it is basically when a government spends more money than it takes in. Milei fixed that by reducing the state to a minimum and closing ministries with no function. However, that led to hundreds of state workers losing their jobs. Although his ideas are correct, those families who lost their only source of income have demonstrated against the president. Milei is the bitter medicine Argentina needs to heal. Most of his predecessors knew what must be done and avoided it. to keep the people's love and votes. But he does not care who he has to offend or fire as long as he gets Argentina out of its current economic crisis. Some consider him a hero, while others see him as a villain. Although a country's economic recovery process is slow, his political rivals are already demanding results from him, even though he has not been in power for a year. To make matters worse, he decided to suspend institutional media advertising for a year to prevent Argentina from going into hyperinflation, so he does not have a single media outlet speaking in his favor. As a result of all these economic adjustments, Argentina is experiencing a very difficult time. But luckily this time, they have a president who knows what he is doing. Therefore, everything leads us to believe that Milei is Argentina's last hope to escape the crisis. However, only time will tell if he was right or wrong. I hope you liked the video. I'll see you next time.